Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Reed Greenberg. I'm Vice President of Client Services at Envision Horizons. And joining me is Victoria Reese, our Account Director, and James Corley, who is our Media Director. We're going to talk to you about Amazon strategy, media, investments, and really how to build your brand and grow your brand. So let's kick it off with Victoria. What do you see are some of the biggest mistakes that brands make launching on Amazon from day one?
So I think what brands are doing wrong is that they expect that Amazon will be a seamless launch experience. So I think first and foremost, you need to be ready for the unexpected. You need to be ready to be hit with all the different idiosyncrasies of Amazon. And with that, coming prepared. So Amazon is a wildly different channel than what you experience on D2C, social platforms, other retailers. So one of the best ways you can set yourself up for success when you launch would be making sure that you have really peeled back the layers of Amazon and what it means to be a successful seller on Amazon. In the beauty space, in the beauty industry, a lot of that comes down to creative and being properly prepared with different content that the Amazon shopper is looking for, not necessarily what your D2C or Instagram shoppers are looking for. So I think coming to the table with who you're really looking to sell your product to, since the D2C shopper and Amazon shopper are wildly different. Once you've kind of compiled that information, ensuring that coming to the table when you're ready to launch, that you've got all the different puzzle pieces fitting together ahead of formally going live. One of the biggest mistakes I see are brands launching while they're not retail ready, don't have inventory readily available, and then you've got a staggered start from the very beginning. And James, I know that you've probably got a take on the media piece. What do you see as one of the bigger issues with media as a new brand who's launching on Amazon?
One of the things that brands try to do is they try to go too high up the funnel too quickly. You want to blast that awareness because you're trying to announce you're coming on the channel, but that really high level awareness doesn't work so well in the beginning when you're still trying to build relevancy. It's about picking your spots, finding your keywords that are really going to be your core and really focusing on that. And once you have that, then you can kind of work toward expanding. But making a huge splash is really difficult to do on Amazon. It takes a lot of off-platform investment to have like a massive first month and be able to spend all the way up to that awareness spend as well.
Got it. So you mentioned off-platform investment. I guess the question for both of you, maybe we'll start with Victoria, is I definitely believe in this notion that you should not place all your eggs in one Bezos, meaning Amazon should not be your primary strategy for your brand entirely. There was a world of omni-channel retail 2018. Now we're looking at this as the world of connected commerce, where you have to have social, you have to have direct-to-consumer, you have to have a retail strategy. What do you advise brands when they only want to focus on Amazon and think that they can get success just from an Amazon strategic lens?
Sure. So I think that for the brands who want to grow the Amazon business as their sole channel, there's still opportunity to stagger your investment and your focus based on the time of year it is. So Amazon has these huge tentpole moments like Prime Days, obviously T5 or T12 now. And what I think I see working really well for brands who want to lean into Amazon is using those key moments as opportunities to send off Amazon traffic to the platform versus always sending it to the platform. The Amazon shopper is budget conscious. They're looking for deals. And one of the best ways to get visibility and acquisition is really, promoting yourself in a way where, we're leaning into these deals, we're leaning into these events at those given periods of time. For the brands who are looking to make Amazon their sole channel, I also see brands aren't always positioned as strongly as they could be from a content perspective. So the omni-channel experience, despite D2C not being your sole business or where you really want to be putting all of your eggs, the experience looks so different. Brands who are really standing apart are those who have really strong content, and it's a similar story they are painting across their D2C and Amazon channels. So it still feels like the same brand, whereas a lot of people who are trying to push into Amazon, they let their D2C run kind of on its own without having the proper setup or pushing a completely different product line.
Great. James, Amazon has a lot of new features for advertisers, for brands to be able to advertise on. There's Amazon Live, there's sponsored videos. In your opinion, what do you think are some of the best ROI channels for new brands particularly to launch?
For ROI, video does really well. A lot of Amazon's innovations have been on the video side. We've now got sponsored product video, which is absolutely brand new. So huge untested area, but anytime you have video, you get a larger sense to tell your brand story. And I think that really works. Otherwise, you can end up being just another product in a search page. So finding ways to really differentiate yourself and get your value prop out there to your customers is a great way to do it. Using DSP for continued re-engagement is a great way. I know on other platforms that sort of continual touch points, it certainly works for me when someone's trying to target me for things. So it's a great way to do that as well.
Great. And we've all heard about AI and this massive shift from people using Google search to using Perplexity or chat to really find products. In your opinion, how do brands optimize on Rufus at this point? What should they be thinking about?
When thinking about Rufus, one of the best ways to optimize for it is use it. So when I'm looking to optimize a brand's PDP, looking at the most commonly asked questions on your PDP using Rufus, looking at your competitors' Rufus questions that are popping up on their PDP. I would then even go to the frequently asked questions on competitor PDPs to see what are customers asking those other brands. Even if it's not populating in the AI right now, that doesn't mean it won't begin populating. So it's requiring these several different layers and having to peel those back to truly optimize against it. And from a content perspective, that doesn't just mean copy, that also means creative. So finding the best ways to implement that information to your PDP is also key. Just because even if someone's asking a question, does that truly need to be in your second image, or would that live better in the description or the fifth bullet point? Those are the questions you need to be asking.
Great. And do you think you still need the basics? You still need 6 images, video, detailed PDPs? Like, what do you think is most important now, and what do you think, if you were to look down the lens in 3 years, how do you think brands need to think about the future?
Sure. So I think right now, absolutely. I think imagery is really where all of the opportunity lies outside of, some of the copy relevancy that comes into play when someone is looking for a keyword, and does that truly live in your content in the title or the first bullet point. If you've ever heard of F-scanning, it's becoming more relevant now than ever. And what that means is someone reads the title and then a little bit of the second line and then virtually nothing after that. What they do look at is the imagery and the video content. And what they're looking for is social proof. They're looking for, clinical studies, specifically in the beauty world. And then they also want UGC and some video content that shows proof of product and proof that it works and is solving for the issue that they are then having. So right now, I see copy is still a fantastic way to increase your indexing and organic ranking juice. That said, I think in the future, there's going to be more weight on keywords and commentary within the imagery itself, just because that's really where consumers are spending their time when they're researching a product. Right now, there is still some relevancy backed behind the bullet points, description. I do see a world where that would change and way more heavily on the imagery.
That's great. And what's your opinion on content refresh for your top-selling SKUs? How often do you want to go in and update the copy, update the content?
I say quarterly, but realistically, anytime there's a shift or disruption in consumer search habits or needs, so maybe there's an ingredient that's trending on TikTok that you need to capture and jump on. So that will disrupt the normal cadence of maybe just a quarterly revamp, or adding in holiday-centric keywords as you get into different tentpoles. So
or seasonality.
Yes, right. So someone who may be looking for, an ultra nourishing, hydrating products right now in the summer is looking for something a bit more lightweight. So identifying those search trends and those different waves and swells is hyper important when you look at how frequently you should be optimizing, which products you should be optimizing, and that goes for creative too.
Great, love that. So James, we work with a lot of great brands. They all want to see fantastic growth. But if I'm a brand owner and I have worked with you for a while and I'm seeing my brand start to plateau, what are some of the levers from a media perspective that we can pull to really juice up my sales?
One of the things that we're usually seeing under indexing in is on conquesting. The market size is only so large, and unless we're doing a ton of out of aisle spend to pull new customers into our category, if we're growing, that means we're taking it from somebody else. That tends to be a little bit more expensive. The ROI is a little lower. So a lot of brands will sort of dip their toes in, but maybe don't jump all the way in. The best thing I would do is to choose 3 of your peer competitors, people who look just like you have the most chance to steal from them, and then just conquest their pages, go after their customers, especially if you see their reviews start to dip and they show like vulnerability, go after that. DSP is another great way. If you haven't already done DSP, if you've started to see your PPC hit a ceiling, you're not really seeing the same return as you're used to, but it's not really doing poorly, it just kind of isn't moving, then DSP is the next lever. That's where you get that re-engagement. You start to hit people who maybe might be interested in your product but haven't explored your category yet. And that's a good way to bring people in while you're also trying to take from others in the category.
Got it. That's great. And maybe just give me an idea on how do you test for branded terms? You know, where if I'm bidding on my name, should that be something I'm doing? How do you test the efficacy of that versus spending money on my brand name where somebody would already be searching and we'd be bubbling up regardless?
Yeah, if you're the top 5 in the organic on your branded terms, then you really don't have to spend that much on branded. It has a really strong return, so a lot of brands will overinvest in branded because it looks so good on a sheet, but then you're really paying for a sale you might get otherwise. If you don't see yourself very often on the keywords that you should be, then obviously that's where you want to invest a little bit more. I think it really kind of depends on what the brand priority is. Some people really like to see themselves splashed all over the page when they search their terms. And so we can do that, but it does come with a little bit more spend. It's all about where are the opportunities. If I don't have all 4 of those sponsored slots, am I going to lose a sale?
Right.
If I have a close competitor who maybe has a good chance to steal somebody right out from under us, maybe we do a little bit more of that digital shelf coverage. But if you're the leader in your category or you have a really strong value prop against your competitors, you don't have to invest as deeply.
And
Great.
James, I do have a question on,
Yeah.
your take on what's the importance of having a sponsored brand headline ad versus your sponsored product placements. Are you saying that, you wouldn't spend on the sponsored brand placement and that may not be as important and you don't necessarily need that space? What's your take there?
I think the sponsored brand is one of the most underutilized types of advertising that we do. It has that sort of billboard effect where maybe it doesn't have as many of the sales directly attributed to it, but when you have that repetition of seeing it at the top and then you see it again, and then maybe you see it again down page if you're continuing to scroll, that repetition really works. So I'm a big believer in sponsored brand. I think it's a great way to tell your story with that imagery like we were talking about as well. So I love sponsored brand, and I would spend a lot more on it.
Sure. So it's safe to say that the importance lies within that advertisement type versus maybe a sponsored product that brands feel that they need to cover, whereas that money may be spent better in the headline placement.
Oh, well said. Absolutely.
I want to ask you both the same question. What is your biggest insight that you have picked up from, I guess, both the July and the October Prime Day that you're putting into play for our clients for T12?
Lead in is make or break.
Tell me more. What do you mean by lead in?
So it can be up to 2 months. I would say at least 1 month before the event. You really want to front load your spend. You want to be getting people to visit your page, and it's okay if they don't buy right away.
So it's all about impressions.
Absolutely.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, and you want to be generating those impressions or those detail page views that then once you hit the event and you've got that conversion driver with a coupon or some sort of discount, you can pull them back to your page and remind them, hey, you looked at this before, but you didn't buy. Well, now there's 30% off. Maybe you buy now. And so I think really building out that audience for your retargeting is crucial. It's also in moving up the ranks, so you want to have really high visibility on those terms that are super important. So all of that takes investment, and you will get 2x what you put in if you front load than what you might do if you wait until the event to really push.
So it sounds like old school RFM metrics layered with digital measurement in 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that's awesome. How about you?
So I think that for tentpoles and what we're doing to replicate success of the Prime Days lies within the Doorbuster mentality. So utilizing this huge moment where there's influxes to traffic to Amazon and using one single product as a doorbuster opportunity. So you see this, back when brick and mortar was a thing and people were standing outside of stores at midnight for Black Friday, they were there for the biggest and best deals. So what we've seen work really well recently is getting people to convert on maybe one or two products with a 40 to 50% deal, and then dropping that particular deal type so that in the future you've got those new customers, that larger audience to then recapture through remarketing and purchase remarketing. It's a great way to get people introduced to a new product line, or just to the catalog itself. So I think that's opened doors, sure, within the event itself generating revenue, but then also after the fact and getting exposure to all these different audiences that we can retarget in all these great new ways.
That's interesting. How do you advise our clients during the holiday season on should they be focusing on top line sales, or should they be focusing on building new to brand, long-term lifetime value?
Sure, and I think that is solely dependent on the goals of the client. But if you're a client who's looking to grow, maybe you're in like the stagnant place, it's a fantastic opportunity to generate that traffic and conversion, which opens other opportunities and doors for you long term. For those who are focused on their top line, a 30% catalog wide pushing through socials is, you're really just going to capture the traffic who came to shop for that deal. You may not be swaying somebody who's exploring the catalog for the first time as greatly as you may if you were to use a Doorbuster. So I would say for those who are looking for long-term incrementality, the Doorbuster is your best option versus those who are really just looking for hitting your top line sales target.
Great. Fantastic. James, I know we do a lot of work with Walmart and Target. At what point do you advise brands to start to explore those platforms if that's a strategic initiative for them?
I think it's a great way to raise your awareness. Just the more you're out there and people can encounter you in the wild, that raises your brand equity. So if you're not quite making the splash that you want on Amazon, or you feel like you might be slowing down, maybe your D2C isn't really hitting as hard as you want, getting indoors is a great way. And Walmart and Target and some of these other ones, the ad tech is a little behind what we're used to on Amazon, but they're making inroads. And the benefit of getting in at a time like this is people haven't figured it out quite yet. And so if you can be the first person to crack the code, then you get a jump on everybody. And then as things change, you are changing from the leadership position in whatever your category is versus kind of trying to play catch up. So I love to get into ad tech in the early days, especially if you make a really good connection with somebody over there, because then you can actually influence the direction the development goes. I was working on Instacart in the really early days, and they asked for tons of feedback from us. And so we were able to, get display advertising pushed way forward on their development pipeline because it was important to us. So you have an opportunity to get exactly what you want and have somebody else do it for you.
And what are your thoughts on some of these other platforms, retail media networks, such as like GoPuff? There's some other platforms out there that I would say are probably underdeveloped from a brand penetration standpoint, and the cost for entry is probably still pretty low. Do you think it's worth brands to think about those platforms?
Yeah, I don't really know so much about GoPuff, but something like Chewy I think is a massive opportunity if you're in the pet space. There's no better way to get to pet owners than Chewy, and it's based on that subscription model, so you can really get that LTV going. If you get somebody to just add you to their box that they get, it can be huge for your business.
And it's a very specific shopper. Like, that there's a pet shopper on Chewy.
Yeah.
On Amazon, you've got to dig a little bit deeper to find that exact person.
Absolutely.
So that makes sense. And I think their cost per acquisition and their cost to acquire a new subscriber is far lower than some of the other platforms.
Absolutely. Yeah, because on Amazon, you're competing with someone who's trying to buy dog food and a TV and a new device and potato chips. But on Chewy, if you are a dog owner, then you're just competing against all other dog products. And so you get that really, really specific audience that has super high intent versus Amazon, where the intent might be there, but it's also kind of split in a few directions.
Fantastic. So I know we take a lot of our brands, our clients who are 1P, we help migrate them to 3P. Tell me about your philosophy on if brands should remain 1P, 3P, have a hybrid strategy.
So I think the best part about moving from 1P to 3P is you have total control over your inventory. And in an environment where now products go viral at the drop of a pin, it can be more difficult for you to then replenish if you are 1P. So specifically in the beauty and skincare space, I think that that's been the biggest gap that's been bridged by moving over to that particular model. And in addition to that, there's also better reporting, so you can get better insights on your audience and your shoppers versus 1P where you're working with Amazon to sell the product, so there's less information at your fingertips that you can really use then in your advertising strategy. Not to mention the benefit of increasing your profitability.
Mm-hmm. Great. How about you, James, from an advertising perspective?
I would agree. There are some benefits to being 1P. I can't prove it, but it does kind of feel like 1P gets a little bit of a benefit over 3P in placements and things like that. But that control over what your content looks like is so much easier on 3P, and just the sort of exposure that you can build on ads. I like 3P. You know what's going on with your account and can fix it quickly on the fly if something breaks. A lot easier, and anyone who's used Vendor Central before knows that making changes is difficult and it takes a lot of time and it's not very intuitive. So I think being 3P is a great way to make that splash.
Great. Victoria, if I'm coming to you, I've got a new brand, new product that I want to launch. Walk me through the steps to take in order for that to be successful.
Sure. So I'll speak specifically to the beauty and skincare space because there are certainly brands who are doing it better than others. One area that I see is the most important is having that social proof and then going through your clinical studies. So having all of that evidence up front ahead of a launch is the most important. In addition to that, influencer seeding and going through creator connections to make sure people have the product, and that way you're generating UGC without the actual lift of it having to come from your creative team. So those are some areas that you would want to focus on first, well in advance to even exploring Amazon. So once you've covered those bases, what's also important is making sure that you have proper studio professional shots so that when you are optimizing content for Amazon, you've got all the different materials you really need to ensure that you are addressing the customers, the Amazon shopper, and what they are looking for out of this product. That means before and after shots. That means including those clinical trials and those studies. That means, pulling in the active ingredients that are most important to the Amazon shopper, and then launching with that content already being made and applied to the PDP. Yep. Additionally, coming to the table with optimized SEO and having already done that research. Oftentimes, what I find with brands who are not really leaning into the new product launch correctly are those who are not retail ready, starting to spend against a product listing that doesn't have proper imagery, doesn't have any reviews, and this is pretty basic stuff. And one brand that I've seen time and time again absolutely crush it with new product launches is CeraVe. They have new splashed everywhere across their PDPs, their brand store. They're supporting with socials. They're making this a big deal everywhere. And in addition to that, I'm sure one of the questions are, well, what if this is a product I'm launching fresh on my D2C? How do I make a moment for both? That's a great question, and there's a moment for each. So having even a staggered approach makes a lot of sense. So maybe you launch on the same day, but the first week you send all of your traffic to D2C, and then the second week you send all of that traffic to Amazon, just so that your shoppers, your D2C people know that it lives on your D2C, and then your Amazon shoppers know that it's also available on Amazon. Because what you launch on your website isn't always going to be the product that your Amazon shopper would purchase. They're waiting for you to be on the Amazon channel.
Do you think you need to have specific SKUs that are differentiated on D2C in retail and on Amazon?
I think it can be an interesting test, and we've been considering this more recently just as the Amazon shopper is a bit more budget conscious. So maybe that means leaning into smaller sizes on Amazon. Maybe that means putting together bundles of like your lower price point items to make sure that you are catering to that audience. Otherwise, those are just shoppers who may not purchase from the brand at all. So I do think that there's a discussion around launching specific Amazon exclusive product lines. It just looks different for every brand.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And James, with Amazon's advertising capability, they've in effect democratized DSP, where if you were a big brand, you could play with DSP. Small brands, you were kind of shut out just from an investment standpoint. How do you advise clients who are thinking about launching a new brand on when they start to migrate to DSP?
If you have a really huge start, if you're massive off of Amazon, you're now just maybe moving into it, you can look at it after a month and a half, maybe 2 months. If it's a brand new product, you're kind of new in the space, you've only been on Amazon for like a year, you're probably looking at 3 to 4 months before DSP becomes super viable. A lot of it comes down to the KPIs. So if you're seeing that performance where you found that ceiling like I was talking about, then DSP unlocks that next level. If you are open to it and willing to sort of spend to build that awareness without a ton of expectation of it coming back to you, then you can launch into DSP a little bit earlier, try some of the top upper funnel, like 1P audiences that we have access to. But really, DSP is an accelerant. So what's working on PPC is going to work well on DSP, and DSP is going to make it work best everywhere. If it's not working on PPC, it's really hard to get it going on DSP. Not impossible, but pretty difficult. And that accelerant really can either, unlock that next level for you or let you know that maybe you might have topped out.
Great, got it. Victoria, I know a lot of the brands that we work with, some have a unique perspective on their consumer, where they treat that consumer as a shopper. They don't really care where she shops, whether it's D2C, whether it's Amazon, whether it's in Walmart or Target or e-retail. There are other brands that we work with are very siloed in their approach. They don't want that D2C consumer to shop on Amazon. They don't want an Amazon shopper to shop on D2C. What do you see works best, how brands think about their consumer and their journey?
So what I think is the biggest battle is getting a brand to understand that your shopper is your shopper. And while it may be more profitable to purchase in one area versus the other, if you can't win them on Amazon when they're shopping for your brand or maybe shopping for a product in your subcategory, then you're losing that sale, even if she's someone who's been purchasing on your website in Ulta. So what I see as the biggest mistake is brands trying to keep it so siloed when in reality, it's all bubbling up to one bigger picture and really winning that brand loyalty long term, no matter where they are, to the brand, to the product, the category, whatever they're then purchasing. So one of the, and James can speak to this too, is getting the D2C information from brands to then use to build lookalike audiences. It can be like pulling teeth sometimes trying to get access to that information, because even when building out lookalike audiences, which are specific to Amazon and negating your D2C shopper, there's still concern around whether or not that audience will actually still filter in some of these people who may have purchased on their website versus Amazon. So James, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that at all.
That's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think being able to negate that D2C audience does help with that. A lot of the apprehension comes from that data is sensitive and you don't want to put that out there. But the encoding that we use is like CIA grade, literally.
Clean room, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like Amazon never touches the unedited data. And so you're completely safe. It unlocks that next level of reaching people who you can't get to just yet because they're not searching the right keywords, or they may not be interested in the category yet, but based on their previous behavior, they're exactly like someone who might be one of your best D2C customers. And finding a way to get to those people can be difficult with some other behavioral targeting, but lookalikes is like a shortcut in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And this sort of reminds me of the old school days. I've been at this a while, and when you had your website team, you had your catalog team, you had your retail team, and those brands really thought in silos, and they did not want to compete for that same consumer. And if that person purchased on the website, the catalog team would say, well, they got a catalog, so it should go to my P&L. I think the brands that we work with who treat that consumer as a consumer-first approach, doesn't matter where she shops, this all ladders up to the single company P&L. Yes, you have to have your line items on Amazon profitability and D2C profitability, but the brands that we work with who think holistically leverage their first-party data to drive to Amazon or drive to Ulta are the ones that we see are accelerating fastest. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And what I also think is interesting is you may have a website shopper who purchases something in your Ulta store, in your website, but maybe there's only certain products available on Amazon and vice versa. So even though your consumer may be purchasing on one channel, doesn't mean they're already not shopping on others. So
Right.
you're really closing doors if you're looking at it in such a siloed way.
Absolutely. And I think, as we know, 80% of product searches begin on Amazon, even if that shopper does not purchase on Amazon. That is your catalog. That's where you need to have a good brand store. You need to have your products up there, because if you're not selling that product, either a third party is, a competitor is, and you're losing the buy box in general.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like it or hate it, Amazon is a signal that you've arrived. When I'm watching TV and I see something new and there's a commercial for a product that I may not have seen before, I go straight to Amazon and I look at there. I may end up buying from that brand directly, but if you're on Amazon, it almost legitimizes you. It's something that's built at least consumer trust, and they've definitely put a lot of work into that outreach. So if you are on Amazon, it does make a difference.
Great. And I want to end with one question for each of you. Victoria, what are you hoping that goes on sale during the holiday season on Amazon that you want to buy?
Well, I think, with winter coming around the corner, I've got some new snowboarding gear that I've had my eye on. So hoping that the Howl gloves go on 50%.
Great. How about you, James?
It's time for me to upgrade my tablet, and I love tech toys. So there's going to be something that maybe I'm thinking about, or maybe I don't know I want yet, that will be there on sale, and good time to get it.
Fantastic. As for me, I'm hoping I can get a Garmin InReach on sale. We like to do a lot of outdoor activities in the wilderness. It's important to be able to exfiltrate yourself in the case of emergency. So thanks again for joining us. We wish all of you and your families a wonderful holiday season and a happy T12 selling season.